right. Now, Paul, but
You just cut out.
are you serious?
You did. When you lean back, it seems like you cut out more.
Yeah, cut out.
I don't know.
I don't
All
know.
right.
They're good now.
Oh, okay.
All right. So, Paul, how do you want us to introduce you?
Chef Paul O'Connell. You know, I'm a chef. I've been on. Right now, you just say I'm a local Boston chef. Right now, I'm working with my girlfriend at the bakery. But I'm teaching. I'm doing classes. Uh, I'm going to start doing some classes at this place, the Foundry, which I'll talk about.
Yeah.
With you. And you know, after I left, when I left Cordon Bleu, I went to NECAT, New England Center for Art.
Yep.
Now, finally, they got it right. It was the New England Center for. They changed to Arts and Technology, but it was whatever. But I was there for a year, and there was a job training program down on Methadone Mile, and since then, you know, I do pop-ups at the bakery. I've done pop-ups at different event spaces. I do, you know, cooking classes for people.
Got it.
And I travel a lot. I don't know.
No, that's part. No, that I can introduce it. So what we'll do is we'll just intro you. You say thanks for being here. You say whatever the hell you want, and then we'll ask our first question.
Yeah,
and then
I'll call formerly of Shane. He owns Shane formerly of Shane Ray and many other places. And I worked at a lot of different. You know, I worked with Todd, and I was Barbara's boss at Olives actually. And you know, I worked at Jasper White and Lydia Shire. And Chris
It's very impressive.
Yeah. All right. So here we go, Jamie. You ready? I'll start us off.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Jamie, you're fuzzy too, Jamie.
Oh my God! What's this?
Looks like there's a water film on your thing. So.
Yeah. Well,
that's strange. Should we get them no video and just sound?
We can do
so
that.
that the sound is clear. Should we do that? It's not ideal, but it might help with the sound.
Yeah. Let me.
Does it sound fine?
Well, I don't know. Would I have to log us back out, Jamie?
No, we just go like that, right?
I can hear you guys fine, so let's just go.
Yeah, let's just do it.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. We don't really use the video for much.
Yeah, okay.
So.
Okay. All right.
Ready. Everyone stop talking. We're doing this. All right. Here we go. Welcome, everyone, to the Culinary Now podcast. And today on the pod, we are joined by chef, educator, and Boston legend. He's shaking his head no, but it's true. It's true. Chef Paul O'Connell, former owner of Chez Henry, and just amazing person. Paul, thank you so much for taking the time during this busy time of the year, the holiday season, to join us on the pod.
Thanks, Matt. It's great to hear your voice again, see you, and it's great to meet Jamie. And I'm so psyched to be here with you too.
Yeah, so I mean, Paul, I wonder, I don't know if we would have ever crossed paths, but I did do a small stint with you at Le Cordon Bleu in Boston. It was actually in Cambridge at the time. It's since closed, but I was very fortunate in my short tenure there to run across you and to kind of get to know you, albeit briefly. And because everyone I talk to who's worked in Boston says that Chez Henry was one of the best restaurants that ever existed for that amount of time. And
wow.
Yeah, no, I'm and I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass. I'm literally telling you that people, when you say that name, they're like, oh, that was great.
Well, I feel like, thanks for that great compliment, but I feel like it was a fondness, kind of, if that's another way to describe it. People were very fond of it. It sort of had a special place in a lot of people's hearts because it had a lot of character. And, when you say, I guess when I say great, I don't want to take anything away from that, but I think great is 4-star Michelin is great, but we're a casual French bistro with the Cuban twist was our tagline. And, but it was a vibe that happened there. It was a place and time, on a Sunday night you come in and there would be, Tony Maz hanging at the bar with his crew after they, had finished up at Craigie, which Craigie Circle was down the street, and then they moved to Craigie on Main. And apparently people J. Kenji Lopez would hang out in there when he was
Right.
first starting out. He was working, I think, with Tony Moss. So, it was that kind of scene in the bar, and in the dining room would be like Yo-Yo Ma, like we were right in the middle of Harvard, kind of residential neighborhood, with a wealthy professor, a lot of law school professors, and apparently Elena Kagan, who's a Supreme Court justice, would come in all the time. I didn't know who she was until one of my waiters told me that Elena's on the Supreme Court now, and I'm like, that's great. Who's Elena? Oh, she comes with the law school, and Elizabeth Warren, but yeah, and so it was a great time and place, and I really I was fortunate to have it.
It's interesting you said, Paul. It's interesting you said that like you consider great to be something else, and I have this conversation all the time with Jamie, with other people, that like what makes great food. I wonder if we put Michelin or we put these sort of restaurants that make lists that are sponsored by water companies that maybe don't matter. I'm not saying anything specific.
Water.
I'm not mentioning anything in particular.
Okay, yeah.
But I'm saying, like, do we put these restaurants higher up on the list than maybe restaurants that matter? And I'm not saying that you're wrong, but
yeah, okay. So, I know we talked about what we're going to talk about is things are changing. Like before I lost my mind trying to get on the computer here, I had my New York Times Best of the Year list downstairs. So maybe it's better I left it down there. But, saying how things are changing. In the Best of the Year list, there is, this great sounding French restaurant that the chef was from Momofuku, and not David Chang, but one of his acolytes or people under him. And, it's very French, but it's also simple, like gambas, shrimp, like in a sizzling, crock with, fruity virgin olive oil, garlic, bay leaf, and the shrimp, and that's the kind of thing that I remember when Farron Adria came to Harvard to do some event, and he said he liked simple things like that. But at his restaurant, he was doing the foam and the smoke and mirrors and all that kind of stuff, So I think that the Michelin star places, I'm not sure what Michelin's picked up, but on this New York Times list, there's that kind of place. And there's also like a Afghan kebab place. But still, there's some fancy fine dining, and Jean Georges is still opening restaurants. It seems like he's, Hudson Yards and this and that and the other thing. And Danielle, is bringing back the French classics. But I guess you could say what's old is new. Well, what's new is new still, and what's new is that some of these ethnically driven restaurants are rising up and becoming more recognized. And I don't know if they're making the water company's top 10 list, but we can talk about there's still things that divide, like really good food from, you travel to Thailand or something and you can find this food that's unbelievable. I think the first Michelin star place that I've heard of was like a food cart or some chicken guy in Singapore, maybe. And it's a barbecue, it's a glazed whole chicken. He got a Michelin star. It's a food cart. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. And I know you've been in the Boston food scene for a while, and you've talking about new and old. Can you talk about some of the changes you've seen in the Boston area food scene since you've been a part of it?
Yeah. So I, what really keeps me involved right now, when I'm not, I don't own my own restaurant anymore, but we do the farmers market for Mariposa Bakery. My girlfriend owns Mariposa Bakery in Central Square in Cambridge, and plug. And she, but I run the farmers markets, and so I've always been involved with that. Even when I had Shanry, I would still go because you see, I can tell you which chefs go to the farmers markets and which ones don't, and buy the produce. But so we were also in Somerville here. There's Bow Market is a big place that comes to mind. That is, I guess, rootsier than say some of the other new food halls that have opened. I've heard of High Street downtown. Yesterday I was down, Matt and I were talking about the Boston Garden. I had to go do some business at a passport of the Federal Building and, on Causeway Street. And there's a food hall in there, so there's Tiffany Faison and Andy Husbands. And those are some names that you hear a lot these days. And they're also associated with, there's a man behind them This guy Brian Lesser is behind a lot of these restaurants. There's been articles about him. So he's like the Wizard of Oz. He's the money guy. And so Andy's Smoke Shops and Tiffany Faison's had several restaurants now. She's great. She has several restaurants. I don't know if she's open more than she's closed or closed more than she's open. But there's that, and then there's all kinds of fried chicken places. So you go in these food halls and you see them. But you go to Bow Market and it's a little more organic. So there's a Filipina woman that's doing a pop-up. And to me, that's what's like sort of exciting about some of the Boston food scene is I don't know how often she's over there, but she has something that maybe you would find her food in a food stall in Manila or something like that. So that to me is like the new food scene that's happening. And there's also places like Celeste in Union Square, or I know Eater is a big Eaters, nationwide. I don't know if there's Eaters international yet, but you read about you go to see the top 10 new restaurants to eat at right now, or 10 hot places for the holidays. They have cool, fun subjects, and they definitely draw you in. Like top 10 places to go get a Christmas cocktail. So a lot of times, a lot of them are right down the street from me. I'm up in Prospect Hill here in Somerville by the tower, and I get to look down at all these places. And they're, I went in one place, and they're like Barisma, and it's Mexican street food bar. And they're like, hey, Paul, remember us? We were graduate students at Harvard, and we used to hang around your bar at Shane Reed. We're architects, and now we have a restaurant. Like, so it's a lot of that, So there's people that's a lot of the new restaurateurs. That there's always been architects involved in restaurants. They sort of go hand in hand. But there's people that are maybe they were, I assume they have some money, Mexico City, but they have a great knowledge of food, the foodies. And they've gone to open a very small 20-seat place down in Union Square. And but then there's also, can you hear me? Yeah. There's also people that are, maybe working and doing a toying at a laundry job during the day. I see there's a big, huge Royal Laundry here. And I see these women come by and they're selling lunch to the workers. And it must be pupusas and tamales and things like that. And then maybe the next step for them is to get a stall at Bow Market, and then to take that food and elevate it, or someone who's whatever has some ethnic background. I'm sure this has happened in New York, and these guys are working for someone like Danielle or Jean Georges or David Chang, and then maybe they're making staff meal a few times, and they're like, "This food's awesome. Where's this from? Oh, my grandmother used to make this, or my mother made this. This is what we eat at home." Where I'm from, wherever they're from, I'll help you out, and maybe they help back them. So that's to me is an exciting new part of the food scene.
You mentioned that architects are backing and opening restaurants. Do you find that more non-culinary people are backing or funding the new, or even opening new restaurants, as opposed to having people with actual culinary background?
They've always been funding. There's an old saying: "You want to make a small fortune? Start with a large one and open a restaurant." But so there's people. That's an ego thing. I can't tell you probably earlier when I worked at Olives when Todd English was starting out, and we were that was a phenomenon in its day. Olives was like off the chain, as they say. Lines out the door, and so Todd would be traveling, and that was my last job before I opened my own restaurant, and I was his chef de cuisine. And like I mentioned earlier, Barbara Lynch had worked there. And she was quickly on her way to bigger things as well. And I think she mentioned Todd in her book, her memoir. And so there was all these great cooks coming through. But I was sitting in the cockpit every night expediting, and so all these people would come up and I'd interview someone like, "I'm a corporate lawyer. I want to be in your kitchen." "Oh, really? What do you do now?" And they could literally point to a tower downtown because we're in Charlestown City Square. "I work in that building up there." "Oh, and but I said, why do you want to come here?" My back hurts, my feet hurt. I love what I do. I'm a chef. "But why do you want to do this? One of your paychecks is probably as much as I make in a month, or whatever it is." He's like, "Because I'm bored. Every day I litigate and litigate." But so those are the people that invest in a restaurant, and it's the ego, and it's ego driven. But I guess what I was saying with the architects is they're actually opening them and running them like they're from Mexico City. This one couple, I think from Burisma. I'm not sure if they're architects or they're PhD students, but they know like they're foodies from when they were kids. And there's different. Now we're getting into the third generation of foodies. You know what I'm saying? So people in France were the original foodies in Italy, and it was natural for someone to open a restaurant, or maybe they didn't. I forget what I'm saying, but so but architects and restaurants, like if you think of the original, The Harvest, where I know there was a chef there that Chef Tao was friends with the pastry chef. There was a bunch of The Harvest was a very well known Cambridge institution restaurant, but it was opened by Ben Thompson, the architect who designed that whole building. So there's a history going back with architects being owners, but not necessarily like these folks were down there in the kitchen or making cocktails. The ones that this sort of jumped to a different level of that.
So, Paul, I want to take it back a little bit to sort of the evolution question, because I know you opened Chez Henry in, was it 94? Is that right?
Good, Matt. Wow.
Well, listen,
I mean, so yeah.
Listen,
yeah,
the internet's an amazing job.
yeah.
No, but so like,
yeah. I opened I had a restaurant called Providence in Brookline.
Yeah.
And I had it for 7 years. I opened that first, and then Chez Henry a year later. And Brookline, I opened. That was like I got more stars there. I was in Food and Wine, Esquire, all these things were Providence, but Chez Henry was more casual,
right,
from the start, but more popular from the start.
So that brings me to my question: is like this, the success is possibly tied to the fact that it was less pretentious, and yes, there's always going to be a need for that sort of upper echelon fine dining, but
it was like I said, there's chefs who came there on their nights off kind of place too, And
I mean, when you ask
special
people,
occasion, I would joke at Chez Henry, we would have some of these regulars like Ophelia Dahl, who helped found Partners in Health, and her partner Paul Farmer just passed away, but they do a lot of very good work. And when they win awards, they go to Rialto, but during the week they come to Chez Henry. They come to Chez Henry 2 or 3 times. So the one time they go to Rialto, and it would be in the paper, they got some award from somewhere and they celebrated at Rialto. So
that's important. It's important because I feel like that was you almost like you had the tea leaves in front of you at the time, that something more casual could be what people want. And like you described people when you were talking earlier, whether it be the protege of Dave Chang, who's doing sort of French food more casually, or you mentioned Andy Husbands, who owned Tremont 647 for years, 20 years probably as well. And then he became a barbecue chef. He became a barbecue chef because that's what people want. People want to cook that food. They want to eat that food.
Yeah. So I opened Providence, and it was definitely tied to me. And I got this Rising Star Chef thing. I was on PBS. I did a show for Rising Star Chefs with Thomas Keller, who was like on the episode before me. And I'm like, I am not Thomas Keller. And French Laundry, I went there for dinner, was VIP, it was all this stuff. But I knew when I opened Chez Henry, my thing was not chef driven. It was concept. The concept was French bistro, Cuban, the bar food. And it turned out the Cuban sandwiches, I know you want to talk about that, became this thing where I was like, I had a sous chef who was ready to quit because he was like, I'm so sick of the Cuban sandwich. Like, what do you think pays the bills around here, pal? Like, not your, maple glazed sweetbreads with, some kind of custard and this and that, which was a great dish. We sold 3 of those last night. We sold 30 Cuban sandwiches. So, and so take your ego. That's great. And go, but Chez Henry, we had, and again, I didn't have the tea leaves, but I knew around the time I was opening, I've been going to Miami, and I'm like, I love Cuban sandwiches. And I had the bar the place was Chez Jean when I bought it. I had been there for a long time. So it was I had a lot of going for it before it opened. Chez Henry it was a neighborhood established place. It was like the cantina for Harvard Law School professors, But in the bar, I'm like, what am I going to do to make this fun? And I had this woman, Karina Mozo, who worked for me at Providence. And her father was from Cuba, and her mother's Montreal. Karina was raised in Quebec, Montreal. So I was like, let's do French bistro and do Cuban sandwiches in the bar. And then I started experimenting with all the Cuban food and having fun with, when I was working at East Coast Grill, Chris Schlesinger was great. He was like, I want you to go take a class. Rick Bayless is doing a seminar at BU. And I went and took a Rick Bayless from Frontera Grill in Chicago. And I was making tamales. This was 20 years ago. And now I know, like, Amanda, who sells Tex-Mex Eats, who's like, woo, I do tamales. I'm like, woo, I know how to make tamales too. From Rick Bayless, was a professor, anthropology professor from Terra Grill. It's like, he's taken, I wouldn't say it's a street food restaurant, but it's an early progenitor of like taking something, food that was considered, I guess, quote, ethnic, and raising it up to, it's not on the border cafe. It's fine dining at Frontier Grill. But anyway, so yeah, but it was concept driven, and I was purposefully like, it's not going to be Chef Paul O'Connell, New American Food, which Providence was.
Right.
It's that Cuban French place.
Can I talk a second about, or can I ask you about the Cuban sandwich? Because you said earlier, take your ego out of it, right? And I know that I worked at a restaurant for years in DC called Saba, and we had a Cuban sandwich on the menu. And I think Cuban sandwich falls into other foods like guacamole or other, like, just where simple is better.
It's really, it's become, Cuban sandwiches now is like websites devoted to
Correct. Yeah.
festivals, Cuban sandwich festivals down Miami or Tampa.
So what is the secret? Like, so like, again, like I think about your Cuban. I've never had your Cuban, but I think about the one I made. Like it was no, but it was basic. It wasn't fluff. Yeah. It wasn't like why was yours so successful?
I'll say a couple things about it. First of all, so at Chez Henri, I'm Chris, again, I'll mention my friend Chris Schlesinger, who helped me get involved with a lot of things like the American Institute of Wine and Food. And we had this thing, his writing partner, John Willoughby, was at America's Test Kitchen for a long time. And so he's like, let's do the Cuban sandwich crisis, based on like the Cuban Missile Crisis at Chez Henri. We're going to have Paul at Chez Henri versus there's the Montrose Spa, which is around the corner from the restaurant, run by a Cuban family, a bodega. And he does his Cuban sandwich, which you're explaining, which is very ham, pork, cold sliced pork, like some people call it porchetta or whatever. Like you can get a cold pork product, slice it, Swiss cheese, mustard, and pickles. Right? That's a Cuban sandwich, pressed on soft white bread. Right? That's the basic Cuban. So Tommy did that at Montrose Spa. And then I think there was some other, I forget what the third one was. Anyway, what I do is I take it a lot of stuff further. So I take what I think sets mine apart is I brine the pork butts for a couple days. And to me, that's a combination of when I worked at Todd English at Olives, we did brine pork chops. And I learned a lot about brining with Todd. We did, I just sort of changed the flavor profile and put molasses. I'm a big kind of history, anthropology nut, and I like, there's Cuba, there's molasses, there's rum, cumin, orange, Cuban food is like not, it has spice, but the spice is cumin. They don't have much hot stuff in Cuba. But then I took at Olives, we also started doing chipotle aioli, which is like everywhere now. But I think like Todd was way out ahead on that stuff. And then I started using it. So I put chipotle aioli on the sandwich. So anyway, but I take this, go back to the pork. I'm a little ADD chef here. Brine the pork, take it out of the brine, and slow roast it for hours at 225 degrees, while taking some of the brine ingredients minus the salt, but orange juice, garlic, molasses, reduce it down, and baste that pork. So it's got this beautiful, golden brown crust on the outside. Pork butts, a lot of fat in it. Cooks a lot of it down. So and then when that's cold, then I slice it, and then it gets heated up again in the sandwich when the sandwich is warmed up. So, and I use good ham, and we were using Gruyere cheese, which now Gruyere cheese is up to like $12 a pound for the loaf of Gruyere, and you can get Finlandia Swiss for $7 or $6, maybe $5. But anyway, and then Karina, who was my chef, she's like, well, what are we going to do to put a little French in it? We put cornichon, and we do dill pickle, but we chop cornichon as well. So it's like 1/3 cornichon, and that's just those little things, and chopped onions. So I dice it up. Again, regular Cuban sandwiches, they have thin sliced pickles later, but I have this pickle mix and sprinkle it up. So I think the pork is the big thing. Several things, Matt. The pork, the bread. I've had chefs call me, "What's that? What's that bread you use on the Cuban?" I've had chefs like, "Oh, I'm doing my Cuban's gonna be better than yours. I'm making my own bread." I'm like, "Good for you." Well, I buy Piantadosi Italian bread from Piantadosi Bakery in Malden because it's spongy enough. It doesn't like I've been lazy. Oh, I could just get another sub roll thing, and that bread crumbles. There's like a crust on the top, and it cracks off. Piantadosi bread that stays like you can get it crunchy on the outside, but it stays soft. It's just something about it that's perfect, and it's chewy. I've had chefs like, oh, I'm making a baguette, and they make like a crispy baguette, and it's like, you might want to serve a couple Band-Aids with that sandwich because people's mouths are going to be bleeding when they're done. Oh. So bread, pork, and like I said, the little things. The pickles makes it unique. Like, oh, they put cornichon in it. And I think a lot of people do chipotle aioli or, a million hot mayonnaise or some kind of spicy thing. That's to like the Cuban guy, Tommy, when I did the Montrose Spa guy, was like sacrilegious, completely sacrilegious to put spicy in a Cuban sandwich. I know, and I'm guilty of it, but people love it. And, if I'm a purist, the pure sandwich really is, roast pork, ham. And, I think I put my pork up against any Cuban's pork because I feel like is true to how they would have made it if you were in Cuba and you were like, oh, I got these pork butts and they're going to go bad unless I brine them or salt them or whatever. They would have molasses on hand. They would have cumin on hand. They would have sour oranges. I put orange and lime or whatever to mimic the mojo, garlic. So, the sacrilegious part is the cornichon and the pickle and the hot. I don't like, but
I mean, it sounds worth it. I'm hungry. I don't know about you, but description, I'm hungry.
Something about it, and it's funny because I'll do them like once. I just did them last week because someone called and asked for their Brookline, and they were having their husband's paddle tennis club party, and they wanted to know if they could get Cuban sandwiches because they remember them. So she ordered 20 of them, and she asked her if this was what I love her. She said, "Can we get them on soft rolls and like baked in a tray so you pull them apart?" I'm like, "Oh, so you want my monkey bread version of the Cuban?" I was playing. No, don't worry. Like I cut them up for or whatever. But but people just have this memory of it. It's a food memory. People just go. So,
but that's what I'm talking about. People still remember this shit. Like
they remember that. They remember Sunday nights in the bar, like the vibe. I don't know. Yeah, it was just the dining room was always a good feeling. It was a warm feeling, and and been several incarnations since. It's been 4 restaurants now since I closed it 6 years ago. So there you go. And COVID obviously did a big number on things, but
right. I know you mentioned when we weren't recording that you are teaching classes. Now, if someone wants to learn how to make your Cuban sandwich, is that something that they could take your class, or what are your classes that you're teaching on?
If you were enrolled in Cordon Bleu, you would have learned. No, but so the thing is that it's one of those things where I would do that. So I'm going to start teaching at this place called The Foundry in Cambridge, and this is one of these new terms, a maker's space. If you're a maker, come on over. He, him, they, them, sure. So it's all about they have a jewelry place, I think a wood shop. It's a really cool space, and I'm excited to go. And I know Nina Simons, who's a cookbook author, did one of the kickoff classes on spices, and Nina did a lot of Asian stuff. She was also, but anyway, so I'm going to do a class over there, and this is so again here. I feel like I'm staying hip with what's going on. They're like, we're going to do a poll. I'm like, okay, that's an Instagram poll, So I sent them like 10 ideas. I was like, cooking. I know so many people, young post-grad, 20, 30 something year olds living around here, It's, I don't know if you've been driving around Somerville or Cambridge or Boston lately, but there's so much construction and new buildings everywhere.
So much. Oh my gosh.
And then the old ones too. It's just the rent's high here. And so I did cooking, economical cooking for the week. That was number 1 on the poll that people wanted to do. cook. I made like blockbuster vegetable dishes because I was doing this cooking class, and these kids were all foodies. They're like, "Have you ever heard of J. Kenji Lopez, Paul?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, he came to my restaurant before I knew who he was." But they a lot of people know a lot about food, so I did a class on braising meats. Because they know how to cook steaks, and these kids are work for TripAdvisor, writing code and this and that. But I'm like, well, I'll teach you how to take lesser cuts of meat. And we went and got beef chuck, and I did a dish I used to do for Chris Kimball's party every year when he was at Cook's Magazine. I do the staff holiday party, and I did a beef carbonade. So it's Belgian carbonated carbonade beef with beer, because these kids are all everyone's into beer now too, right? So I can make you beef beer stew to speak their lingo, and tell them how to brown the meat and why am I browning it? It sears in the juice. I was like, no, it doesn't. It caramelizes. The Maillard. Oh, we know the Maillard effect. I'm like, oh my god, these kids know. They're not culinary students, and they're. So I was explaining more about like the Maillard effect. It was like roasting coffee beans, but anyway, taking lesser cuts and braising them. So that's one of the classes I'm going to do, and for sure the Cuban sandwich is a lesser cut.
Awesome.
So Paul, I have a question. I know that's why even in our short time at Le Cordon Bleu, people liked you, because you always spoke to what was really relevant, like at the time, whether that was food trends or just impactful like flavors that they should really target in their cooking. I had kind of a fun question as we sort of round this out, and I was thinking about this. Jamie and I were talking when you were trying to get on the call. Is like I was thinking, I have moments in my life where I experience certain things in food. And I'm going to give an example, and I want to ask if you have any of these that really changed my perspective and opened doors for me. So these could be like the first time I ever had French fries with mayonnaise. Like I thought it was gross for years and years. And then all of a sudden you have fried food with mayonnaise and you're like, holy shit, like what was I missing? And that opens the door to so much. Fried oysters with like remoulade. Or the first time I ever dipped toast into an egg yolk. Like, do you have these moments throughout your career and your life? And
Sure. So that's a really good question. I like that, Matt. So I think like when you're a chef, you have these moments before you realize you're having them. But I remember, I'm going to go way back to growing up in Melrose, Massachusetts. I was a paper boy. And one of the main reasons I was a paper boy was that I wanted to have money, obviously. The only reason you're a paper boy. Read the paper? No.
What's a paper?
Boston Globe and Herald. All the Republicans got the Herald. This is the old days. The Republicans were old Yankee ladies. And all the new. Anyway, I had an orange soda and like a Baby Ruth bar, and I was like, this is unbelievable. And I'm like, and I didn't go, I'm going to be a chef someday. But I think back, I still remember that going like, what a flavor profile combination. So then those moments though, I had like, I remember coming to Paris for the first time I took People's Express airline to Gatwick Airport in London. It's like taking a bus. It was like taking a bus to Europe on an airplane, bringing your own food and everything. And then I took the boat over I stayed in London, and I was going to go stay with this girl who had been she'd been an exchange student, stayed with us in Melrose, and I was meeting up her in Paris. And I got off, I came out of the subway, the metro in Paris. It was a foggy day. And the first thing I did was I got baguette with butter and ham on it. Simple thing, right? That's one of those simple French things. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So like that was a food moment where I'm like, I love this simple stuff, And then, but what you were saying, all those things you mentioned, like French fries with mayonnaise, and I felt like I had so many of those moments with Todd English. Todd English really, he just, man, that guy, people say what they will about him, and he's still like now I see he's back at it in Vegas again.
Oh yeah,
he's still like for better or worse, building these huge towers of food and all that. But the main thing was he got these flavors like that would just be like, check this out, and how to make like at Chanry. Another great thing I used to do was conch fritters. People love those, and I did those with the chipotle aioli. But we also made. I had other chefs helping me, like Corina came up with. We had guava paste as a common ingredient. The Goya. It looks like a giant flat can of tuna. Open it up and it's paste. And it's almost like in Spain with the you have with cheese. I forget what it's called. Anyway, it's a fruit paste. Melted that down with red wine, and we need a drizzle of that on these conch fritters. So it takes them to this other level. That's like this sweet guava drizzle, spicy chipotle, and a little. And it was like I could eat those all day long. And now I'm thinking about, I'm like, I want to have like a big Mai Tai or some kind of periodista was this other drink I did. That, like, I did these cocktails there, and this kid wrote this whole series on Google Periodista sometime. This guy, he's like a cocktail nerd, does this whole where's Periodista come from? And I found it in a Esquire cookbook. I had this old Esquire thing, and this piece of paper fell out. It's a simple drink. It's like rum, triple sec, and apricot liqueur and lime juice. And this guy's writing this whole article, and he named all these bars, and they were all bars that my bartenders worked at after they worked at Culinary. And I was like, it comes back to here, dude.
Yep.
Like, this is where the trail ends, was the Periodista with these conch fritters, whatever. So those food moments, but I really would say Todd really gave me, like, I don't know, he
was monumental. I mean, so many people reference him.
You look at him; he's still huge. He's still big. And and he gets criticized, and right, sometimes for like doing excesses of a chef or whatever, but excessive food. But I would travel with him, we'd do things together. It was like, check this out. And we're just like, okay. And then the negative thing is like, all right, we'll make this one component of 20 I'm going to put on the dish. But there would be that one thing you'd eat together. That would be like that, like, like tasting the French fries with mayonnaise, There's another thing at Cordon Bleu or at NIC had all these Latino students from Lawrence area, mostly Dominican or Puerto Rican, and they stuck back there talking about mayo ketchup. I'm like, what? Mayo ketchup. I'm like, what is that? Mayonnaise and ketchup.
Yeah.
Now it's in the bottle in the supermarket. Heinz makes it. It's like, you can't buy those two things separate and just mix them together. You got now, so these things that you hear about on the street level, it only takes this much time before it's at Market Basket. It's not at Whole Foods yet, but it's at.
It might be
soon enough.
It might be.
Oh, it's Heinz. Just Whole Foods doesn't carry Heinz products, I don't think.
Right.
But yeah. No, it's like, so it starts on the street. These flavors, and Chipotle aioli. I remember Todd was the first one who made that I knew, and now it seems like I can't remember a time when there wasn't Chipotle aioli around.
Yes, it's everywhere. It seems.
So
on all the menus.
Yeah, but I don't know what's new. What's pick one new flavor, Matt. What do you do these pop-ups and they sound really cool, and what are you seeing like?
So I mean, I feel like we're still exploring. It's not truly new, but I feel like the world is still living or experiencing this fermenting like craze. I think some of the higher restaurants are like really taking that and making different sort of like condiments, and I use the word like garums or fish sauces or things like that people we know these are centuries old.
Anyway, comes to mind.
Yeah, I mean they're centuries old, but people are doing them, and now they're marketing them in a way that is making them more universally accepted. Like I feel like 20 years ago,
esoteric too, though. So that's one. That's a whole nother podcast. It's like I go to these restaurants, including the one that used to be mine, and it's like, man, it's so esoteric. The whole menu's like that, but these people at the bar want something to share. We're not going to share fermented dried cabbage leaf crumbled on top of the oysters or whatever. So
right.
It's really cool, and I agree. And then one of some restaurant trends that makes me a little sad right now is pastry. A lot of these restaurants don't have desserts anymore. I'm like,
Jamie, what's up?
I'm like, what's going on? And I don't know if it's priced out, but some of us could make desserts really well. I feel like, I did pastry. I was the pastry chef at Jasper's. I would never call myself a pastry chef. I know enough to be dangerous, but that's one thing. I'm like, there's that guy Brian. Was it Brian Mercury or someone like that? Do you know?
Yeah.
Something really good. He's at Cafe Beatrice now.
Yeah.
Some great.
He does desserts for all of Will Gilson's restaurants.
Yeah, it's so wonderful to go and have. and with a nice dessert. You know, and I see
So
someplace
I agree. And
well, we're making our own gelato. Great. Where's the biscotti to go with it? They can't even make a biscotti to go with it. I'm like, oh, come on, chef. I don't
so
know. I'm sorry.
in the fear of going completely down another rabbit hole, I just have to ask this question. Jamie, is dessert dead?
why would you ask me that? No, of course it's not dead.
Because I knew
What
you
I
would
think
give
is
the answer.
happening, what I think is happening though, is I think that, and I think this has been happening long before COVID, but I think COVID kind of exemplified it, is when pastry chefs leave for whatever reason, I think there's this pull towards not filling that position anymore. And either the chef is taking over and doing more
Shuffle
simple
in a few
desserts,
things, yeah.
or they're having just a pastry cook, and the pastry cook is doing very simple things. But I think the restaurants are trying to save money by phasing out that pastry chef position, because I don't think that they see the value in it, where pastry can do more than just pastry. I was making bread for service, I was making bread for other savory things on the menu.
Well,
It's
now
like
that's
it goes beyond. I was making syrups for the bar. Like it goes beyond just the pastry department.
my when I was getting ready to close Sherry, my manager was trying to let's not put bread on the table anymore. Let's not. I'm like, really? Like, it's like to me, I don't know. Yeah, that is one phase of pastry chef, and it's like, so have a show on that. Bring
No,
back.
I just like seeing Jamie get animated, and it's like it's like my favorite thing
It makes
when
my
she gets
head want
excited.
to
It's
explode.
because
I just go to these places. And I'm like, there's all this talent on the menu, and then it stops because their pastry chef quit, and they got like, well, I still know how to use the Paco chat, so I'm making gelato, but you can't bring
People don't
it.
understand that pastry is the last impression of the meal. You
Exactly.
don't want to have a great meal and then a really crappy dessert, because that's the last thing you're leaving with, is that impression. That's what you're walking away with. So it's so important to finish the meal through, including to dessert, whether guests choose to get it or not.
I'm an unhappy diner when I don't have dessert at the end of a nice dessert at the end of my meal.
Oh, me too.
and it's funny because I feel like a good chef, and I think Paul, this is what you're describing. A good chef should know that they can't just put all their energy into that first 2/3 of the menu. They should
Yeah.
actually have restraint to
Yeah.
kind of let off the gas a little bit to let that final impression
Yeah.
thrive.
There you go.
So
Send everyone back to Johnson and Wales.
oh yeah, shameless plug that
Hey,
Paul's.
is my picture still up down there? I think I did a guest
Oh
thing
yeah,
down there once, and I was like, I think they put me next to Joel Robuchon or something, and I was like, that made my head explode.
yeah. It's still there. It's still there. We have these amazing photos of all these chefs that came through,
I
and
want
I
to come
think you're
down
right.
and
I think
visit
you
you guys.
are. I think you're wedged between like Joel Robuchon and Paul Prudhomme. So like
Well, I'm still alive.
No pressure.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
alive.
There
Yeah.
you go.
But I want to. Is this podcast has anything to do with Johnson and Wales or no?
Not loosely. I mean, we both work there. We try not to say anything bad about it.
Well, invite
No,
me down. Find a reason to invite me down sometime.
yeah, no, we'll definitely do that, Paul. And I just want to say thank you.
Or whatever, and do something. So, yeah,
Yeah.
thank you guys. And I've been listening, and it's fun. I do listen to podcasts to go to sleep. One night, I think I woke up at 3 a.m. to like a Matt Britt dream. You were talking, because I fall asleep with the headphones in. I'm like,
Wow.
Matt.
Listen. We could do another whole podcast about that. How we need to unpack that, and we might want to bring in some like professional help because that sounds
Somewhere between. Well, you're not Rick Steves, but
no, definitely
he
not.
relaxes me to sleep.
So I listen, Paul. One of the reasons I love talking to you is, and I mean this in the best possible way, is you are pleasantly all over the place, and you can talk literally about anything.
Yeah.
And you have history and you have incredible insight. And I feel lucky for any student that comes through your door at the Foundry. And if you are in the Cambridge area, check out Mariposa Bakery. I know Paul does a lot of work there.
Central Square, yeah.
Paul, do you have like a social media
I do
or Instagram they can find you at?
Yeah, I have Paul Shea Henri. I have to send you the link, but and I do some fun things. Like one of the funniest things I did was a cooking class with my dog. I have a Portuguese water dog, and she jumps up and sits on the chair, and I was like, so. But I have some funny stuff on there, and I try and I was making
People will pay
latkes the
money
other
for
day
that.
for Hanukkah. I do. I should do more. People say that I can be funny, so I just need someone to hold the camera because when I'm doing it like this, it doesn't. But I'll send you a link to my
Yeah, send us a link. We'll put it in the show. We'll put it in the show notes so that people can find you.
Instagram.
Um,
Yeah,
I just want to say
yeah.
thanks again for joining us. This was a great conversation.
Yeah.
And for those listening, remember all the great people Paul talked about. They paved the way for the future. So,
Some still going. Todd English is still going.
yeah, yeah,
Jasper's done. Chris Lessinger's done. Lydia Shire's still cooking.
yeah.
She's still at Liberty Hotel at Scampo. So anyway,
All right.
thank you guys. I really appreciate you having me on.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, Paul, hang tight.
Don't forget dessert.
Yeah, don't forget.